You ever wake up in the morning and feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders? Like no matter how hard you try, something invisible is pulling you down. It's not always people. It's not always the circumstances. Sometimes it's you. It's the war inside your own mind, the expectations, the guilt, the fear of disappointing others, the constant craving for approval. You keep showing up for people who wouldn't even notice if you disappeared. You keep sacrificing your peace just to keep someone else's chaos in check. But let me tell you something, that is not freedom. That is bondage disguised as loyalty. That is self-neglect painted as love. You want to know when you'll finally feel free? It's not when everyone loves you. It's not when your bank account hits a number. It's not when they finally apologize. No, you'll finally feel free when you stop betraying yourself to make other people comfortable. That's it. That's the shift. The moment you say, I deserve peace too, the chains begin to break. This speech isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming whole. And you cannot be whole if you're constantly pouring into everyone but yourself. You know what keeps so many people in chains? It's the need to be seen, the need to be heard, the need to feel worthy, but only through the eyes of someone else. You could be doing something powerful, something meaningful, something divine, but the moment someone disapproves, doubts you, or doesn't clap loud enough, you start questioning your whole path. You shrink, you silence yourself. You start to doubt the voice inside you just because the voices around you sound louder. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Not everyone deserves access to your spirit. Not everyone is qualified to see your vision. Some people are too broken to see your beauty, too blind to see your light. And yet we give them the pen and let them write our worth. That's how we end up living lives that aren't even ours. We dance for approval, beg for crumbs of attention, and call it love. That's not love. That's survival. That's a soul trying to breathe in a room filled with smoke. And it's time to open a window. It's time to let the air in. Because validation from the wrong people will suffocate everything that makes you, you. You ever notice how the people you're constantly trying to please never seem to be pleased? No matter what you do, how hard you work, how kind you are, how much of yourself you sacrifice. They always want more. And not because you're not enough, but because they are empty. And empty people don't know how to receive love. They only know how to consume it. So they take and take and take, and you keep giving because you think maybe this time they'll appreciate you. But what happens? They still walk away. They still talk behind your back. They still don't show up when you need them. And you sit there blaming yourself, wondering what you did wrong, when in reality, the only mistake you made was giving your worth to someone who didn't even value themselves. When a person doesn't love themselves, they'll never recognize real love when it walks in. They'll resent it, they'll reject it, and they'll ruin it. You can pour oceans of love into a person, but if their heart is cracked and closed, nothing you give will ever be enough. Not because you're not worthy, but because they aren't ready. The moment you stop chasing approval, you start chasing purpose. The moment you stop needing to be liked, you start living a life that's aligned. Because here's what no one told you. Being misunderstood is not a failure. It's a sign you're doing something right. Not everyone is meant to understand your spirit. Not everyone has the eyes to see your growth. And that's okay. It's not your job to convince them. It's not your job to shrink yourself so they feel comfortable. Stop making yourself small for people who never had the capacity to hold you in the first place. Stop playing a role in their show when you were born to write your own script. Too many of us are trapped in character, trying to be the good one, the reliable one, the strong one, because we think that's the only way to be loved. But true love doesn't require performance. It requires presence. It requires truth. And the truth is, when you stop seeking validation from people who are still lost in their own insecurity, you stop dimming the light. You were sent here to shine. Sometimes the people you're waiting on to validate you are secretly threatened by your potential. They see your strength, your glow, your courage, and it makes them uncomfortable. So they criticize you, they withhold praise, they act indifferent. Not because you're not amazing, but because your light reminds them of the work they haven't done. Your joy highlights their stagnation. Your joy highlights their bitterness. And instead of being inspired by you, they resent you. So here you are, wondering why They won't support you, why they won't celebrate you, when in reality, they're fighting battles inside themselves that have nothing to do with you. That's why you can't wait around for their applause. That's why you can't keep trying to win over hearts that are too hardened to open. Some people won't clap even if you're on fire, because they didn't start the flame, and that's okay. Let them watch in silence. Let them misunderstand you. Let them doubt you. Because when you keep showing up with truth and fire in your chest, you don't need their permission to keep rising. The most dangerous thing you can do to yourself is hand your self-worth over to someone who hasn't earned the right to hold it. You don't give the key to your peace to a person who keeps slamming the door. And yet, that's what we do when we chase validation. We hand over our identity like a gift to people who don't even know how to unwrap it. People who judge us through the lens of their own pain. People who project their fears onto our dreams. People who've never built anything of substance, but somehow have something to say about our purpose. You cannot keep giving VIP access to your life to people who are just passing through. It's time to reclaim your name, reclaim your energy, reclaim the belief that you were enough before they liked you, before they approved of you, before they even noticed you, because you were, you are, and you always will be. Whether they clap or not, your life still matters. Whether they stay or not, your light still shines. Don't dim it for anyone. I know it's hard. I know you were taught that love looks like bending over backwards, like staying silent to keep the peace, like giving more than you get. But real freedom comes when you realize you don't have to beg for the bare minimum. You don't have to prove your value to people who only see you through the lens of their own wounds. Some folks aren't capable of loving you right, and that's not your fault. That's not your burden to carry. You didn't fail because they couldn't see you. They failed because they weren't ready to witness someone real, someone bold, someone free. And freedom is terrifying to people who live in fear. So don't you dare trade your freedom for their comfort. Don't you dare abandon your calling just to fit into someone else's expectations. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to break cycles, to elevate, to rise above what they said you'd be. And the first step to rising is letting go of the weight of needing their validation. What happens when you stop seeking their approval? You start feeling peace. You start walking into rooms without wondering who likes you and who doesn't. You stop second guessing your voice. You stop over explaining your decisions. You stop shrinking. You start taking up space. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you finally believe you belong. And you do. You've always belonged. But you were too busy looking through their eyes to see it. Let this be the moment you start looking through yours. Let this be the day you choose your vision over their opinions. Because you cannot walk in purpose and chase popularity at the same time. One will always require the sacrifice of the other. Choose the path that feeds your soul, not your image. Choose peace over performance. Choose truth over applause. Because the right people, your people, they don't need convincing. They'll recognize your light, not because you begged for it, but because it speaks the same language as their spirit. You know what's wild? The people you seek validation from are often the ones who wouldn't know what to do with your heart even if you handed it to them. They haven't done the healing. They haven't built the depth. They don't have the tools. But still you give them power. You let them decide if you're enough, if you're worthy, if you're lovable. And when they reject you, you internalize it. You start believing maybe they're right, but they're not. Rejection isn't always a reflection of your value. It's often a reflection of their capacity. Don't confuse the two. Don't let their inability to love you convince you that you're hard to love. You're not. You're just deep. You're just real. You're just a mirror. And when people look into you, they see everything they're not ready to face. That's why they pull away. That's why they make you feel like you're too much. But let me tell you something. You are not too much. You are just not meant to shrink. You were never created to be small. You were created to shift the atmosphere. You don't need a committee to confirm your calling. You don't need the crowd to crown you before you rise. Some of the most powerful breakthroughs in life happen when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when no one even believes in you but you. That's where the fire is born. That's where faith is tested. That's where resilience is built. And that's also where freedom begins. When you decide that your voice, your vision, your presence is enough, even in the silence, especially in the silence. Stop scrolling through life hoping to find your worth in other people's eyes. You'll never find it there. Your worth is in the mirror. It's in your story. It's in your scars. It's in the strength it took to survive every moment that tried to break you. And that's something no one can take from you. That's something no one has the authority to judge. So take it back. Take back your power. Take back your voice. And when they don't understand you, smile. Because you weren't born to be understood by everyone. You were born to be remembered by the right ones. Just do this. Start saying no without guilt. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But for so many people, it's one of the hardest things they'll ever do. Because saying no feels like rejection. It feels like letting someone down, like you're being selfish or cold. We've been conditioned from childhood to be agreeable, to be polite, to say yes, to avoid conflict and keep the peace. But here's the problem with that. Every time you say yes to something you don't want, you're saying no to yourself. You're betraying your own time, your own energy, your own truth. And that silent betrayal builds up. It drains your spirit. It fills your life with obligations that don't align with your purpose. It teaches people to expect your compliance, not your authenticity. So now you've become the person who's always there, always available, always exhausted. And the worst part, no one thanks you for it. No one sees the toll it takes on your mental and emotional health. They just keep asking for more. And you keep giving, not because you want to, but because you don't know how to stop without feeling guilty. That ends the moment you decide your peace matters more than pleasing people. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your no. You don't have to justify it with a long speech or offer a list of excuses. No is a complete sentence. But we've been trained to soften our boundaries, to cushion our refusals with half yeses and maybe laters. And what happens then? People don't hear no, they hear convince me. They hear hesitation. They push, they test, and eventually they wear you down. That's not respect. That's manipulation. And it only works if you give away your power. When you say no firmly and clearly, without guilt or apology, something powerful happens. You reclaim that power. You draw a line that tells the world, this is my limit, this is my energy, this is my time, and I will not bend it for approval. Saying no doesn't make you rude. It makes you responsible. It means you're managing your life, not letting other people do it for you. And when you start practicing it consistently, people around you shift. They either learn to respect you or they remove themselves. Either way, you're better off. Because boundaries don't push people away. They reveal who was never really for you in the first place. Let's be honest. The guilt isn't about the no itself. It's about the story in your head that says saying no makes you unkind, ungrateful, or unlovable. But that story isn't truth. It's programming. It's the voice of a younger you who learned that love had to be earned through sacrifice. That being good meant being agreeable, that your needs should come last if it meant keeping peace. But you're not that person anymore. You're not a child seeking approval from authority. You're an adult building a life. And your time, your health, your spirit, they matter. So when you say no, you're not being selfish. You're being honest. You're honoring your own capacity. And guess what? You have a right to protect your peace. You have a right to choose rest over running, solitude over social events, alignment over obligation. You have a right to not feel guilty for being unavailable, because availability should never be confused with love. Constant access is not the proof of your goodness. Your worth is not measured by how much you give to others. It's measured by how true you remain to yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. People will test your no. They'll question it. They'll try to make you feel bad about it. Not because your no is wrong, but because your yes was too easy before. You train them to expect access, and now you're changing the rules. So they'll guilt trip you. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're being distant, cold, or dramatic. That's okay. Let them. That's the price of transformation. Every time you step into a new level of self-respect, you'll shake the foundation of old dynamics. That discomfort isn't a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're growing. So don't fold when they push back. Stand firm. Let your silence speak louder than their protests. You don't need to argue. You don't need to explain why your time is sacred. The people meant for you will adjust. They'll honor your space, and the ones who can't, let them walk. Your job is not to be constantly available. Your job is to protect the energy that allows you to function, to thrive, to grow. And the more you say no without guilt, the more your life fills with the things that truly matter: clarity, purpose, and peace. Saying no is one of the most spiritual acts you can perform. It's a declaration that your soul has value, that your energy is not for sale, that your days are not a free-for-all buffet for people who don't consider your capacity. We live in a world that glorifies hustle, that praises overcommitment, that romanticizes burnout. But what's the reward for all that self-sacrifice? Approval? Temporary praise? A fleeting moment of feeling needed? It's not worth it. Because while you're busy giving yourself away, your dreams are waiting. Your peace is waiting. Your healing is waiting. And none of that can happen if you're constantly caught up in everyone else's agenda. Saying no isn't just about rejecting requests. It's about choosing yourself. It's about creating the space to hear your own voice again, to breathe, to rest, to remember who you were before the world told you to be everything for everyone. So every time you say no without guilt, you're breaking a generational cycle of self-abandonment. You're teaching your inner child that it's safe to choose peace. You're showing your future self that you're ready to live in alignment, not just survival. The most confident people you know, they say no with ease. They guard their time like gold. They don't flinch when they set a boundary. Why? Because they understand that energy is currency. And every time you say yes to something that doesn't feed your purpose, you're spending energy you'll never get back. So they're intentional. They're focused. They don't chase approval. They protect their power. And if you want to step into that level of confidence, you have to start doing the same. You have to stop fearing the discomfort that comes with disappointing people, because that discomfort is temporary. But the damage of constant people pleasing, that stays with you. It shows up in resentment, in burnout, in waking up one day realizing you've lived everyone else's life but your own. So the next time someone makes a request that doesn't sit right with your soul, don't negotiate with your gut. Listen to it. Respect it. Let your no be loving, clear, and final. You don't owe your life to anyone just because they asked. And you don't need to sacrifice your sanity to keep people comfortable. You are not responsible for how others feel about your boundaries. That's their work. Your work is to be clear, consistent, and kind, but not apologetic. You can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. It's not noble. It's not admirable. It's toxic. And eventually it leaves you empty. You can't pour from an empty soul. You need rest. You need space. You need to be seen as more than just what you can give. So let go of the guilt. Guilt is a liar. Guilt whispers that you're bad for choosing yourself. But truth says you're finally waking up. You're finally realizing your value. You're finally living on purpose. And that means there will be tension. Some people won't like the new you. The you that says no when it's not aligned. The you that doesn't drop everything just because they snap their fingers. And that's fine. Let them adjust. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Because your responsibility isn't to be liked, it's to be whole. And wholeness often requires difficult choices. It requires disappointing people who are too used to the version of you who never spoke up. Look at how much peace you gain when you stop saying yes out of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being labeled difficult. That fear has kept you small for too long. But here's the truth. People who love you for your yes don't love you. They love your compliance. And the moment you start living in truth, their love turns cold. That's not love, that's controlled. And you were never created to be controlled. You were created to be free. Free to choose. Free to rest. Free to prioritize your well-being without guilt. So start practicing that freedom. Say no to the invitation. Say no to the favor. Say no to the conversation that always drains you. Say no, not because you're angry, but because you finally value yourself. Every no you speak is a yes to your growth. Every boundary you hold is a bridge back to your power. And when the guilt rises, because it will, Just breathe. Remind yourself that guilt is not the guide, truth is. And your truth matters. Your needs matter. You don't need permission to protect your peace. Just do it and keep doing it. The first few times you say no, it will feel awkward. You'll doubt yourself. You'll want to over-explain, backtrack, or soften it with a maybe next time. But stay strong. Let it be uncomfortable. Growth always is. And eventually that discomfort fades. It's replaced with clarity, confidence, and calm. You stop being a hostage to everyone else's expectations. You stop building your life around other people's plans. You start moving in sync with your own rhythm. And you begin to trust yourself again. That's the gift of a well-placed no. It rewires your brain. It rewrites your story. It teaches you that you are enough, even when you're not pleasing someone. And that kind of self-trust, that's priceless. That's what creates joy. That's what creates purpose. So if you're tired, if you're overwhelmed, if you feel like you've lost yourself in the chaos of everyone else's needs, it's time to take a step back. And it starts with one word, one choice, one moment of boldness. Just say it. Say no. Not with anger, not with shame, but with love. Love for your life. Love for your time. Love for the peace you're finally ready to protect. Let go of trying to fix broken people who don't want to heal. That mission will drain you, frustrate you, and eventually break you too. You can pour all your love, energy, patience, and wisdom into someone, but if they're not ready to grow, nothing you do will make a difference. Healing is a personal choice. It can't be forced, begged, or manipulated into happening. You can't want it more than they do. You can show them the mirror, but if they refuse to look, you can't make them see. So many people fall into the trap of becoming a savior, thinking love can transform someone who doesn't even want to change. But love is not enough when accountability is absent. And the longer you stay hoping they'll rise, the more you sink. You lose pieces of yourself trying to glue someone else together. You silence your needs to avoid triggering theirs. You walk on eggshells while calling it compassion, but that's not love, that's self-abandonment. You were not created to be someone's rehab center. You were not placed on this earth to be their crutch. You're not supposed to carry someone who keeps choosing to crawl. It's okay to love them and still walk away. Trying to fix someone who's not trying to fix themselves is like watering a dead plant and expecting it to bloom. It doesn't matter how much attention or care you give. If there's no life, there's no growth. And the hard part is sometimes they act like they want help. They talk about their problems. They cry in your arms. They say they want better. But nothing changes. They go back to the same cycles, the same behaviors, the same excuse, and you keep giving them another chance, thinking maybe this time is different. But it's not. Because pain alone doesn't create change, intention does. And if that intention isn't there, you're just enabling a cycle. You start to confuse their comfort with progress. You confuse your exhaustion with sacrifice. But real love doesn't destroy you. Real love doesn't feel like a burden. Real love is mutual effort. It's both people taking responsibility for their healing. You shouldn't have to do all the emotional lifting while they watch. That's not partnership. That's codependency. And the longer you carry them, the longer they stay stuck. You become their excuse not to grow. Their safety net, their escape from facing themselves. It's not your job to rescue people from their own self-destruction. That's a truth most people don't want to accept. Because we've been conditioned to believe that love means holding on no matter what, that walking away is cold or cruel, but sometimes letting go is the kindest thing you can do for them and for yourself. When someone refuses to heal, they'll drag you into their chaos. They'll make you question your worth. They'll project their pain onto you and then blame you for the fallout. And slowly you'll start to feel responsible for things that were never yours to carry. Their mood becomes your burden. Their choices become your stress. You lose sleep over problems they won't even acknowledge. And yet you stay, hoping that love will awaken them. But it won't. Love is not a replacement for inner work. You can support someone through healing, but you cannot drag them. That journey is theirs to walk, and if they refuse to take the first step, you have to stop standing still waiting. Your life deserves forward motion. Your peace deserves protection. You can't grow while staying planted in someone else's avoidance. You may think you're being loyal by staying, but what you're really doing is betraying yourself. Loyalty is noble when it's mutual. But when it's one-sided, it becomes a prison. You keep giving your all to someone who barely shows up for themselves, and over time, your spirit starts to dim. You become a shell of who you used to be. Always tired, always worried, always trying to make it work. But healing is not teamwork when one person refuses to participate. You can't force someone to see their value. You can't convince them they're worth healing if they're committed to their brokenness. Some people use pain as a shield. They wear it like armor to avoid accountability. And they'll keep attracting people like you, healers, fixers, empaths, because it gives them temporary relief, but they don't want permanent change. They want someone to soothe the symptoms while avoiding the cure. And that's not fair to you. You deserve a connection where you're not constantly fixing, but growing. Where you're not losing yourself in the name of helping. You deserve someone who meets you halfway, who's just as committed to healing as you are. Stop mistaking potential for reality. Just because someone could be better doesn't mean they will be. And your love won't magically unlock that version of them. You're not a magician. You're not God. You can't control someone's path no matter how badly you want to. It hurts, yes, because you see the good in them. You see the light hiding beneath the wounds. But until they see it for themselves, nothing changes. You'll be stuck in a loop of almosts and maybes. They'll keep promising change and delivering excuses. And you'll keep hoping, waiting, sacrificing. That's not love, that's torment. You deserve peace. You deserve progress. And you can't have either if you're clinging to someone's potential instead of accepting their reality. Let them go, not because you don't care, but because you do. Because you care about your life, your growth, your sanity. Sometimes love looks like walking away so they can finally confront the emptiness without your constant rescue. Sometimes letting go is the wake-up call they need. Or maybe it isn't. Either way, your healing can't be postponed any longer while you wait for theirs. You're not cruel for choosing peace. You're not heartless for setting boundaries. You're not selfish for saying, I can't do this anymore. Those are signs of maturity, signs that you're evolving. And with that evolution comes separation, because not everyone can come with you, especially not people who refuse to grow. You are not meant to be an emotional sponge for someone else's wounds. You are not created to be the buffer between someone and their rock bottom. Let them fall if they must. Let them break if they need to. Because true healing doesn't happen until the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of changing. And as long as you keep rescuing them, they'll never feel that pain. You become the cushion, the safety, the enabler. That's not love. It's a trap. And you've been stuck long enough. It's time to breathe, to choose you, to stop fighting battles that don't belong to you. Let go of the guilt. Let go of the need to be their savior. Let go of the belief that love equals sacrifice. Real love respects boundaries. Real love grows. Anything less is a burden, not a bond. It's hard, I know. Letting go feels like failure. It feels like giving up on someone you still care about. But what you're really doing is giving yourself back to yourself. You've been lost in their pain for so long that you forgot what it feels like to be light, to be free, to not wake up in emotional survival mode, to not brace for their next crisis. You deserve more. You deserve mornings that begin in peace, not panic. You deserve relationships where love doesn't require you to shrink. And you can't find that as long as you're tied to someone who won't do the work. They don't need more of your love, they need more of their own courage. And until they find it, your love will always go to waste. You can't fill a cup with holes in it. You can't save someone who keeps diving back into the fire. So save yourself. Choose the version of you that's no longer willing to be consumed. Choose the peace that waits on the other side of release. Your healing starts where their chaos ends. Healing is a solo journey. It requires personal accountability, honesty, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths. And if someone's not willing to go there, you can't drag them. You can't sit in therapy for them. You can't unpack their trauma for them. You can't choose growth on their behalf. All you can do is lead by example. Be the light. But if they still refuse to follow, let them go. Not everyone is ready to heal, and that's okay. But you don't have to stay stuck just because they are. Your journey is calling, your purpose is waiting, and you can't answer that call while tangled in someone else's dysfunction. It's not love to stay silent while they self-destruct. It's not loyalty to abandon your peace in the name of support. True support has limits. True love has boundaries. And when someone continually violates both, you have a right, no, a responsibility to walk away. You can still wish them healing. You can still pray for them, but you no longer have to be their lifeline. It's not yours to carry. Let them do their work and you go do yours. When you stop trying to fix people who won't heal, you create space for people who will. People who take ownership of their lives. People who meet you in the middle. People who don't expect you to be their therapist, their parent, or their emotional punching bag. You start attracting relationships rooted in mutual growth, not codependent rescue missions. You start healing parts of yourself you didn't even realize were broken from constantly trying to fix others, because when you let go of their chaos, your clarity returns. You find your joy again. You laugh more. You breathe easier. And life stops feeling so heavy. That's what freedom feels like. And yes, there may be moments when you miss them, moments when your heart aches for what could have been. But let that pain remind you why you left. Let it fuel your decision to choose peace over potential, to choose freedom over familiarity. You've done enough. You've given enough. Now it's your turn. Your turn to heal. Your turn to grow. Your turn to be with people who don't need fixing, just loving. Stop apologizing for growing, evolving, and changing. There will be people in your life who don't understand the transformation you're going through, who question why you no longer act the same, why you no longer tolerate the same things, or why you've pulled away from dynamics that once felt familiar. But your growth isn't something that needs to be justified. You don't owe anyone an explanation for healing, for choosing better, or for creating distance between you and the things that once hurt you. People will try to make you feel guilty for becoming someone they can no longer control, for finding your voice, for speaking your truth, or simply for changing your mind. But that guilt is not yours to carry. That's their discomfort talking. The discomfort that comes when someone outgrows the version of themselves others were comfortable with. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to outgrow relationships, habits, beliefs, and environments, and you are allowed to do it unapologetically. Because the truth is, if they truly cared about your well-being, they'd celebrate your growth, not guilt trip you for it. So stop dimming your light to fit into rooms you've already outgrown. Stop saying sorry for finally choosing yourself. When you begin to grow, you'll notice people who once supported you starting to withdraw. They might make subtle comments, laugh off your ambitions, or act like you've changed for the worse just because you're no longer stuck in the same cycles. But what they're really saying is, you've outgrown the version of yourself I felt most comfortable with. And that's not your fault. Growth requires discomfort. It requires letting go of outdated identities. And sometimes it requires walking away from people who are only connected to the old you. You can't keep apologizing every time your evolution makes someone else uncomfortable. That's like apologizing for breathing differently now that you've learned how to survive. There is nothing wrong with changing. There is nothing wrong with demanding more from life, expecting more from people, and wanting more for yourself. Your growth doesn't require validation. Your healing doesn't need a permission slip. So if you've become too ambitious, too confident, too self-aware, or too boundary-oriented for some people, let them go. Your journey is not a consensus. It's a calling. And you're not here to shrink so others can stay the same. There comes a point where you realize that staying the same just to keep others comfortable is the real betrayal. Not just to yourself, but to your future. Because every time you apologize for your growth, you teach yourself that evolving is wrong. That becoming stronger, wiser, more self-assured is something to hide. But growth is never shameful. It's not something to be whispered about or downplayed. Growth is powerful. It means you're no longer stuck in survival mode. It means you've looked at your past and made the brave decision to change your future. But people who refuse to grow will always see your progress as a threat. Your healing becomes a mirror to their pain. Your confidence exposes their insecurity. And they may try to tear you down just to feel tall again. But their reaction is not your responsibility. Let them talk. Let them criticize. Let them say you've changed. Because you have. You've stopped settling. You've stopped living to please others. And you've started choosing a life that actually feels good to you. So no, you don't owe anyone an apology for that. Keep growing, keep evolving, keep choosing yourself. even if it makes others uncomfortable. Don't let nostalgia trap you in places you've already outgrown. Just because you once found comfort in a person, place, or version of yourself doesn't mean you owe it forever. Growth means you can look back with love, but move forward with intention. You can honor where you came from without staying stuck there. And sometimes the people from your past won't understand this. They'll ask why you're different now, why you don't respond the way you used to, why you've become more distant, more focused, or more protective of your time. But what they're really asking is, why won't you keep being who I needed you to be when I wasn't ready to grow? And the answer is simple, because that version of you no longer exists. You're not here to maintain the comfort of others at the cost of your own expansion. You've learned to love yourself deeper, to dream bigger, to say no when something doesn't feel right. And that's not selfish. That's survival. So stop apologizing for putting yourself first. Stop apologizing for no longer tolerating mistreatment, for having boundaries, or for wanting more than just existing. You've come too far to turn back now. There will be days when growth feels lonely, when the silence of separation echoes louder than the praise of progress, when you miss the familiar faces that were tied to your former self. But don't confuse loneliness with wrongness. Just because your path feels quieter now doesn't mean you're going the wrong way. Growth often requires solitude. It calls for reflection, and it demands clarity, something that can't happen when you're surrounded by a noise that tells you to stay small. And yes, you might lose some people along the way, people who liked the version of you that didn't speak up, that didn't challenge their behavior, that made space for everyone else but yourself. But losing people is not the worst thing. Losing yourself trying to keep them, that's what you can't afford. You didn't come this far just to shrink again. You didn't endure all that pain, all those lessons, all those sleepless nights just to stay stuck in someone else's version of you. So when that guilt tries to creep in, when someone tries to guilt you for changing, remind yourself of everything you've overcome. You earned this growth. You earned this peace. Don't apologize for claiming it. Sometimes people will say you're too much now that you've grown, too bold, too vocal, too direct, too confident. But what they're really saying is, I'm not used to you having boundaries. People grow accustomed to the version of you that needed validation, that kept the peace at the cost of your own discomfort, that went along to get along. But the moment you stop apologizing for your truth, the moment you speak up instead of shrinking down, it disrupts the dynamics they benefited from. And that's okay. You weren't made to live in a box built by other people's comfort zones. You weren't born to be palatable, agreeable, or easy to manage. You were born to be real. And realness means changing. It means saying, I'm not okay with this anymore. It means leaving the table when respect is no longer being served. So let them say you've changed. Let them call you difficult. Let them misunderstand you. That's none of your business. Your only job is to stay true to the person you're becoming. The one who's finally unlearning how to shrink, how to stay silent, how to make yourself small. There's power in that, and it needs no apology. You have to remind yourself that growth isn't betrayal, it's alignment. You're not turning your back on people by choosing to heal. You're not abandoning anyone by choosing peace over chaos. And you're certainly not being ungrateful for wanting more than what kept you broken. The world will try to guilt you into staying small. Family might say you've become distant. Friends might say you've changed. But remember, people who love you will grow with you, not against you. Those who truly want what's best for you won't shame your transformation, they'll support it. But you have to be willing to lose the approval of those who benefit from your stagnation. You have to be willing to let go of comfort for the sake of growth. You don't need to apologize for evolving. You don't need to explain why you no longer engage in the same behaviors or participate in the same dynamic. Your life is yours. And every step forward is a reflection of the courage it took to break free from the old patterns that no longer serve you. Don't dim your light to keep others from facing their own darkness. Let your growth shine, loud and unapologetic. You don't need anyone's permission to change. You don't need a round of applause or a unanimous agreement before you decide to become a better version of yourself. Change is messy, it's uncomfortable. It sometimes feels like grief, because you're not just evolving, you're saying goodbye to parts of yourself that once felt safe. And yet you must move forward. You must honor that tug in your soul that whispers, there's more for you than this, even if others don't understand, even if they think you're being dramatic, too ambitious, or too sensitive. Let them think what they want. Their inability to evolve isn't your responsibility. You're not here to drag people into their healing. You're not here to wait around for others to catch up. You're here to grow, to expand, to transform. And no, it doesn't require an apology. If someone truly values you, they'll evolve with you. If they don't, they'll fall away. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to stay. Some people are just lessons, stepping stones, mirrors. And when their time is up, you have every right to keep growing, even if they choose not to. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to dream bigger. You're allowed to walk away from anything that no longer aligns with who you're becoming. That's not arrogance. That's evolution. You're no longer the version of yourself who stayed quiet to keep the peace, who tolerated disrespect to avoid confrontation, who abandoned yourself just to be accepted. You've learned too much, healed too deeply to go back to who you were. And it's okay if that makes others uncomfortable. Your evolution is not an attack. It's not a rejection. It's simply a reflection of your own inner work. And if others can't handle that, it's not your burden to carry. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them stay stuck. Your future is calling, and it won't wait around for your apologies. It's time to stop saying sorry for no longer fitting into places that hurt. It's time to stop explaining why you've outgrown what once felt like home. Growth is your birthright, change is your power, and you're finally stepping into both. Boldly, fearlessly, without regret, without guilt. Because this version of you, the one who finally chose themselves, that's the real you. And you owe no one an apology for finding them. Just do this. Sit with yourself. Listen to your soul. In a world that constantly demands your attention, that pulls you in 1,000 directions, that fills every silent moment with noise, sitting in stillness with yourself can feel uncomfortable at first. You've been trained to escape it. The moment silence creeps in, you reach for your phone, turn on the TV, call someone, do anything but be alone with your thoughts. But that stillness, that quiet is not your enemy. It is your truth. Within it lies every answer you've been searching for outside. You don't need more advice, more validation, or more distractions. You need presence. You need connection, not with the world, but with your soul, because your soul has been whispering to you for a long time. It's the ache you feel when something isn't right. It's the ache you feel when something isn't right. It's the pull you sense when you're headed in the wrong direction. It's the peace that floods you when you finally honor your intuition. But you can't hear it until you get still. Until you sit down, breathe deeply, and ask yourself, what do I need right now? Not what the world wants, not what others expect, but what your soul truly longs for. It won't always be easy. Sitting with yourself means facing things you've buried, emotions you've avoided, wounds you've tried to patch over with busyness and distractions. But healing doesn't happen through avoidance. It happens through acknowledgement. It happens in the quiet moments when you finally allow yourself to feel what you've been suppressing. You may cry. You may feel restless. You may want to get up and run away, but don't. Stay. Stay with yourself long enough to see that you are not broken. You are not too much. You are not behind. You're simply human, navigating a world that rarely encourages stillness, rarely encourages self-connection. But the moment you make space for it, everything begins to shift. You start recognizing patterns. You start hearing your inner voice more clearly. You start letting go of things that never belonged to you. And in that stillness, you discover your power. Not the kind of power that screams or forces, but the kind that's grounded, steady, unshakable. That's the kind of power that only comes when you sit with yourself, when you listen without judgment, when you finally let your soul speak louder than the noise of the world. When you give yourself the gift of solitude, you begin to understand the difference between loneliness and being alone. Loneliness is a longing for connection that feels missing. Being alone, when embraced intentionally, is an act of deep self-love. And it's not about isolation. It's about recalibration. It's about resetting the nervous system, reconnecting to your heart, realigning with your values. And the more you do it, the more you crave it. Not because you don't love others, but because you begin to see how much wisdom, peace, and direction you hold within yourself. You no longer chase people who don't see your worth. You no longer stay in environments that drain your energy. You become more discerning, more protective, more intentional with your time and presence. Sitting with yourself allows you to clarify your desires, your needs, and your boundaries. It brings you back home to a place that's not shaken by other people's opinions, not shaped by external success, not defined by temporary circumstances. You remember that your soul already knows the way. You just need to slow down long enough to hear it. And when you do, you'll wonder why you ever looked for answers anywhere else. Your soul isn't loud. It doesn't shout over the chaos. It whispers. And you'll miss it if you're always rushing, always filling your space with distractions, always listening to everyone but yourself. You might be asking, what should I do with my life? Or why do I feel so empty even when everything looks good on the outside? But those answers aren't out there, they're within. You've simply forgotten how to listen. You've forgotten that clarity doesn't come from overthinking or endless advice. It comes from inner alignment, from stillness, from being radically honest with yourself. When was the last time you sat down without a goal, without an agenda, without needing to produce or perform? When was the last time you asked yourself what you feel, not what you're supposed to feel? These moments of truth require courage, because sometimes your soul tells you things you're not ready to hear, like the relationship that's not right, the job that's draining your spirit, the path that's leading you further from your purpose. But truth doesn't exist to hurt you, it exists to free you. And the sooner you listen, the sooner you heal. There's a reason you feel anxious when things get quiet, because in that silence, your soul finally has room to speak. And the truth is that voice has been drowned out for years by noise, by fear, by the pressure to keep up. But when you sit with yourself long enough, you begin to peel away all the layers you've built to survive, the masks, the roles, the identities shaped by others. And underneath all of that, you find your essence, your true self, the part of you that has always known who you are, what you want, what you deserve. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you've always been. That's what soul listening does. It reconnects you to your authenticity. It reveals the truth you've buried under years of expectations. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. You start making different choices. You stop settling. You start honoring your energy. And you no longer tolerate anything that forces you to betray yourself. This kind of alignment isn't loud or flashy. It's quiet. It's subtle. But it changes everything. Because once you learn to listen to your soul, you stop needing the world's approval. Sitting with yourself allows you to build emotional resilience. Because instead of reacting to life from a place of chaos or confusion, you start responding from a place of wisdom. You're no longer tossed around by every external storm. You develop a sense of inner calm that can't be shaken. You learn to ride out uncomfortable emotions without suppressing them. You learn to be with your sadness without drowning in it. You learn to sit with uncertainty without forcing a quick answer. That's emotional maturity. And it comes from practice. It comes from giving yourself space to feel instead of fix, to understand instead of judge, to accept instead of resist. And every time you choose to sit with your discomfort, to breathe through your fears, to listen to your intuition, you strengthen your connection with your soul. You become your own anchor, your own healer, your own safe place. That doesn't mean life won't hurt, but it means you'll stop abandoning yourself in the face of pain. You'll stop running. You'll face it with open hands and a steady heart. And over time, you'll realize your soul was never fragile. It's the strongest part of you. There's something sacred about simply being with yourself. No pressure to perform. No need to impress, no one to please, just you, breathing, feeling, existing. In that space, healing begins. Not because you're doing anything, but because you finally stopped doing everything. You've stepped out of the noise long enough to remember that you are already enough. You're not behind, you're not broken, you're not failing, you're evolving. And evolution takes time, it takes space, it takes silence. This is the space where you begin to forgive yourself for what you didn't know, for the times you settled, for the ways you abandoned yourself to feel loved. You begin to see yourself with softer eyes. You start nurturing the parts of you that never got to feel safe. And little by little, you return to wholeness. Not because you changed who you are, but because you finally saw yourself clearly. That kind of clarity only comes from sitting with yourself, from being present in your own body, in your own mind, in your own soul. It's not about fixing, it's about listening. And when you listen, you find peace that no achievement or relationship can give you. Many people go their whole lives avoiding themselves. They chase goals, relationships, and validation, trying to fill a void that only self-connection can heal. But no matter how far you run, you always end up facing yourself. That's why the work begins within. That's why sitting with yourself matters. Because when you finally get quiet, you realize what truly matters to you. You realize how much energy you've wasted trying to be someone you're not, how much you've compromised your peace for the sake of fitting in. But all of that changes when you start listening inward. You start asking better questions. You stop blaming the world for your unhappiness and start taking ownership of your energy. That's where empowerment begins, not from control, but from clarity, from alignment, from inner trust. And every time you choose to return to yourself, to sit in silence, to breathe through the noise, you strengthen that trust. You remind yourself that no matter what happens around you, you have a place within you that is steady, wise, and whole. That is your power. And it's always been there. You just had to slow down enough to find it. The truth is, your soul is your compass. It will guide you if you let it. But most people are too busy following maps drawn by others. They ignore their intuition because it doesn't make logical sense. They betray their gut feelings because it might disappoint someone. But your soul knows what your mind hasn't figured out yet. It knows when something isn't right. It knows when it's time to let go, to move on, to choose differently. And the more you listen to it, the louder it gets. That's what sitting with yourself does. It tunes you back into that internal compass. It realigns you with your truth. It helps you make decisions, not from fear, but from faith. Faith in yourself, faith in your path, faith in the quiet voice that keeps whispering, this is not the end. Keep going. When you trust that voice, you stop needing to force things. You let life unfold with more grace. You navigate change with more peace. And even in the uncertainty, you feel grounded because you're anchored in your soul, not in outcomes. That's a freedom you can't find anywhere else. So just do this. Sit with yourself. Not once, not occasionally, but often. Make it a habit. Make it sacred. Whether it's 5 minutes or 50, give yourself that time. That silence. That space to just be, not to fix, not to plan, not to strive, but to breathe, to listen, to feel, to remember who you are underneath all the noise. That version of you is not lost. It's waiting patiently for you to return. And when you do, when you sit, listen, and reconnect, you'll realize that everything you've been searching for outside has been within you all along. Your peace, your clarity, your healing, your direction. It all starts when you come home to yourself, when you stop running, when you stop apologizing for needing rest, reflection, and realignment. When you finally say, I am ready to hear what my soul has been trying to tell me. That's the beginning of everything. That's where true transformation starts. And it doesn't require noise, achievement, or anyone's approval. Just stillness. Just presence. Just you. Detach from the outcome, commit to the process. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things to do in a world obsessed with results. From a young age, we're taught that our value is tied to our achievements. The grades we get, the trophies we win, the promotions we earn. Everything revolves around outcomes. But the truth is, outcomes are often outside our control. You can do everything right and still not get the reward you expected. You can train for months and lose the race. You can pour your heart into a project and not get recognized. That's life. And if your sense of worth, purpose, and peace is tied to that outcome, you'll constantly live in anxiety, disappointment, and frustration. That's why you need to shift your mindset. Let go of the need to control how everything turns out. Let go of the desperate clinging to results. Instead, turn your focus to the process, the daily actions, the effort, the mindset, the discipline, the attitude. That's where your power is. You can't guarantee what will happen, but you can show up fully. You can control how you show up today. And that is enough to create real, lasting change. When you detach from the outcome, you begin to experience a different kind of peace. It's not the peace that comes from achieving something, it's the peace of knowing you did your part. It's the inner calm that comes from being aligned with your values. When you stop obsessing over whether or not you'll succeed, you become more present. You stop worrying about what people will say or how you'll be judged. You stop overanalyzing and overthinking. You start flowing with life instead of fighting against it. Think about the artist who paints not to sell, but to express. Think about the athlete who trains for the love of the sport, not for the applause. Think about the entrepreneur who builds something out of passion, not just profit. These people find joy in the process itself, and ironically, they're often the ones who do achieve great results, not because they chase them, but because they're deeply immersed in the work. When you fall in love with the process, everything changes. You become resilient. You keep going when others quit. You build character. And even when the results don't come right away, you stay grounded because your peace doesn't depend on the outcome. There's a reason why detaching from the outcome feels so unnatural, because the ego craves validation. The ego wants results. It wants recognition, awards, and applause. It wants proof that we're enough. But when we constantly chase results to validate our worth, we become prisoners of performance. We become addicted to winning, to approval, to external affirmation. And the danger is that the moment things don't go as planned, the ego collapses. We question ourselves, doubt our path, and start thinking we've failed. Even if we gave our best, detaching from the outcome means silencing that ego. It means reminding yourself that you're already enough, that your worth is not determined by a scoreboard, a bank balance, or a title. It means developing a deeper connection to your purpose, a purpose that's rooted in growth, in learning, in contribution. When your focus is on the process, you start asking different questions. Instead of did I win, you ask, did I grow? Instead of did I succeed, you ask, did I show up with integrity? Those questions are far more powerful because they build a life of substance, not just surface level success. It takes courage to detach from the outcome, especially in a world that constantly pressures you to measure your progress by results. People will ask you, what do you have to show for your efforts? They'll measure your value by your metrics. And if you're not grounded in the process, you'll start questioning yourself. But true growth doesn't always produce immediate results. In fact, the most meaningful transformations often happen in silence, in private, without any recognition. It's in those lonely hours of practice, the days when no one is watching, the seasons where you're not winning, that you're actually building strength. Committing to the process means learning to value those invisible wins. It means celebrating the discipline to show up, even when there's no guarantee of success. It means trusting that the seeds you plant today will eventually grow, even if you can't see them yet. And it means understanding that the outcome is just a moment in time, but the process is your life. Your character is built in the process. Your habits, your resilience, your inner strength, they're all forged in the process. That's where the real reward is. When you fixate on the outcome, you create unnecessary pressure that kills your creativity and drains your energy. Think about it. How many times have you started something with passion, only to become discouraged because you weren't getting the results fast enough? You lose motivation not because you hate the work, but because the outcome isn't meeting your expectations. That's the trap of outcome-driven living. It robs you of the joy of creation. It makes everything feel like a test instead of a journey. But when you shift your mindset to embrace the process, everything changes. You begin to find joy in the repetition. You see meaning in the struggle. You find power in the daily grind. There's something beautiful about showing up day after day simply because you're committed. Not because someone's watching, not because you're guaranteed a reward, but because it matters to you. That kind of commitment creates momentum. It builds confidence. It fuels you from the inside out. And eventually those small, consistent efforts start to compound. The results may come slowly, but they come with integrity, not out of desperation, but from genuine, grounded action. When you're committed to the process, you learn patience. You stop rushing. You stop forcing. You begin to understand that growth has its own timeline. You realize that just because you haven't seen results yet doesn't mean nothing is happening. Sometimes the most powerful breakthroughs are happening beneath the surface. It's like planting a seed. You don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You water it, you nurture it, you trust the process. That's how life works too. You can't always see the progress, but if you keep showing up, it's happening. Detachment from the outcome is what allows you to stay grounded during the waiting. It keeps you from giving up too soon. It gives you the endurance to stay the course, even when the finish line isn't visible. And the more you practice this, the stronger you become. You stop living for the destination and start honoring the journey. And the irony is, when you no longer need the outcome to feel fulfilled, you're more likely to achieve it. Because you're not desperate, you're devoted. That subtle shift changes everything. There's freedom in detachment. Not the kind of detachment that means you don't care, but the kind that means your identity isn't wrapped up in the results. You care deeply. You give everything you have, but your peace doesn't rise and fall with the outcome. That's emotional freedom. It means you can pursue your goals without being crushed by them. You can take risks without being paralyzed by fear. You can try, fail, learn, and grow, and still be whole. That's the kind of strength most people never develop because they never learn to let go of control. They want certainty, they want guarantees, but life doesn't offer those. It offers growth, it offers opportunity, it offers lessons. And those lessons are most available to the person who's focused on the process. The person who's willing to stay humble, who's willing to keep showing up, keep learning, keep improving. The process is where your character is tested and shaped. The process is where you become who you were meant to be. And the longer you stay in it, the more grounded, clear, and powerful you become, not because of what you achieved, but because of who you became. This mindset doesn't just apply to career or success. It applies to relationships, to healing, to personal growth. So many people rush the process of healing because they're desperate to feel better. They want the pain to go away. They want closure. But healing isn't an outcome. It's a process. It's messy. It's unpredictable. It doesn't follow a timeline. And if you're attached to how it's supposed to feel or how fast it's supposed to happen, you'll constantly feel behind. But if you commit to the process of self-reflection, of honesty, of forgiveness, of letting go, you'll find that healing comes in waves. Some days you'll feel strong, other days you'll fall apart. That's part of it. The process is what transforms you. The process is what softens you, strengthens you, wakes you up. And when you surrender to it, without trying to control the outcome, you find a deeper kind of peace. You stop asking, when will I be healed? And start asking, how can I love myself through this? That shift is everything. It brings you back to yourself. And that's the greatest healing of all. Even in your spiritual journey, detachment from the outcome is key. People often approach spirituality with a results mindset, hoping for peace, enlightenment, or answers. But the deepest spiritual growth doesn't come from trying to get something. It comes from surrender, from devotion, from simply showing up to the practice, whether it's prayer, meditation, service, or silence, without needing a reward. You do it because it centers you, because it connects you, because it humbles you. And when you stop chasing spiritual highs, you start experiencing real transformation. You become more grounded, more compassionate, more awake. That's what happens when you detach from the spiritual outcome and commit to the spiritual process. The irony is the very peace you were chasing shows up not because you demanded it, but because you made space for it. You learn to trust that you're exactly where you need to be. You stop comparing your path to others. You stop needing signs and start becoming the sign. That's the power of process over outcome. It's the quiet, steady, faithful commitment to something greater than yourself, without needing it to prove anything to anyone. At the end of the day, detaching from the outcome is not about giving up on your dreams. It's about changing the way you pursue them. It's about anchoring your sense of worth, peace, and purpose in the effort, not the result. It's about building a life where the process itself is meaningful, where the work you do, the growth you pursue, and the way you show up is its own reward. And when you live like that, you're free from anxiety, free from pressure, free from the constant need to prove yourself. You become someone who's deeply rooted, who doesn't chase validation, who doesn't crumble when things go wrong. You become someone who trusts life, who moves with purpose, who stays steady in storms. And over time, that kind of energy attracts real success, not just temporary wins, but lasting, soul-alive success. That's what happens when you let go of the outcome and commit to the process. You stop performing and you start living. You stop chasing and you start becoming. And in that becoming, you realize the process was always the prize. As we reflect on everything discussed, it becomes clear that true growth, peace, and fulfillment are not found in the outcomes we chase, but in the process we commit to. Life is unpredictable. Results come and go. Some days reward you, others humble you. But through it all, what truly matters is who you become in the journey. When you release your need to control how things turn out, you make space for something greater: presence, discipline, resilience, and purpose. You stop defining yourself by wins and losses and begin measuring your life by effort, integrity, and courage. The pressure to succeed, to be recognized, to prove your worth can often pull you away from your deeper purpose. That's why detaching from the outcome isn't about not caring. It's about caring so deeply that you're willing to show up fully, regardless of the reward. It's about choosing consistency over comparison, inner strength over external approval, and long-term transformation over short-term validation. The process is where your strength is forged. It's where your mindset is shaped. It's where you discover what you're really made of. The late nights, the quiet moments, the times no one sees you trying, those are the sacred spaces where the real work is done. Committing to the process means showing up for yourself every single day, even when there are no guarantees. It means trusting that the universe, God, or life itself is working in your favor, even when you can't yet see the fruits of your labor. It means giving your best without being attached to what you'll receive in return. And when you live that way, with dedication, purpose, and faith, you gain a kind of freedom that can't be shaken by failure or disappointment. You grow from within. You rise without needing applause. You thrive, not because of a perfect outcome, but because you stay true to your path. So wherever you are right now, whether you're building something new, healing from something painful, or simply trying to find your way, remember, the process is not the obstacle, it is the way. Embrace it, trust it, honor it, because what you're becoming is far more valuable than what you're trying to achieve. Keep going. Keep showing up. Not because you're guaranteed success, but because your soul deserves the effort. The process is sacred, and you are stronger than you know. Thank you for being here. Thank you for committing to growth. Keep your heart open, your spirit steady, and your focus on the path, not the prize. God bless you, and may peace and strength guide you always.